You know who's not going to have 10 wins at the end of the season?
There's a few on that list.
The Las Vegas Raiders, I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah, they're on that list.
It is. What the hell was that?
They love getting the lead and making you feel like that they're going to win.
I saw a stat where they've done it 3 times this year. And in the past –
But the lead was what, 17?
17, nothing. But they've done that 3 times this year, blown a lead.
Jeez.
I forget what the stat was. I'll find it. But I think it was like they haven't
in the history
done
of the Raiders, it's only been done 5 times.
Yeah, 5 times.
I mean, listen, there's, it could be worse. I mean, you could, well, actually, it can't be much worse. That's pretty bad.
If Al was still around, how do you think he would handle this situation?
Gone.
He gone?
You think he already
After
fired?
1 year? Does he make the whole season?
Whole season. He's gone at the end of the year. I hope they keep losing.
All right. Well, you want to hear from Josh McDaniels?
I would love to hear what he has to say.
Let's hear some Josh McDaniels afterwards. Knowing that the way that game went, Berto is going to call for his job just like he's Dave Roberts. So here was Josh McDaniels.
We've played, like I said, we've played some stretches of football that are good enough to get ahead and produce a lead, but that's not what this league is about. This league is about playing the second half just as well as you played the first half and trying to win the game. So sometimes lessons are learned the hard way, and obviously we've had to swallow some difficult ones this year. But I have a lot of confidence and faith in the way that these guys will respond.
Yeah, so
I was curious as to what you would say to that.
So it's just, I don't think he's getting clipped this year, but the way this is going, the heat's going to be on in the offseason, no?
Let me ask you guys this. When looking at a team kind of come up short the way they have come up short, you can look at it from a positive, glass half full, or glass half empty if you're negative. There are positives to take away from what the Raiders are doing, while there are, the negatives as well. If you're looking at it, Jonas, Q, if you guys are looking at where the Raiders are right now, do you see this as a team that it has a new head coach and they're settling into what his standard is, what his expectations are, and they're trying to figure it out? Or are you looking at it like this isn't working, whatever it is that he's doing, and maybe he needs to change something right now versus staying the course if that's indeed what he's doing?
I think the hardest thing about a new head coach coming in is their decision on evaluating where that roster is at and what they can do schematically. Like I've played for Josh McDaniels. He's a really bright offensive mind. Taught me a ton about offensive football. He's a smart coach. I know they've lost some games, and look, maybe it'll be determined he's not a good head coach. There's a lot of guys who fall in that category. They're great defensive coordinators, great offensive coordinators, but as a head coach, they just have a hard time doing it all, and that's okay. Maybe we'll find that out. I always feel like when you take over an organization, especially at the NFL level, you can only do so much in one, off season, right? You've got your draft, you've got your free agency, and then you got to work with what you have and try to put those players in a position to succeed. But I remember talking to one of my buddies who's an offensive line coach in the league, and just from offensive line and personnel and scheme from team to team, it could be a dramatic turnover as far as what you're looking for out of those players and what you're asking them to do. And you could probably say the same thing for defensive backs or cornerbacks and how you want them to play coverage, how you want them to play man, or how much more, more zone they're playing and how they're playing zone coverage. Like, it varies. And it can be night and day. And those players can be, trying to make it work, and they could be putting in a position to fail. So I always feel like it's a hard transition. I'm always impressed with coaches who can figure out how to make it work with the players they got. Sometimes that doesn't last. But in this case, I think that's what I would chalk it up to. I've talked about the system, how difficult it is for quarterbacks to learn, let alone everyone else for that matter. I mean, there is a bunch of different protections. And to get everyone on the same page, it's not like your West Coast protections. We're like the running joke in quarterback rooms with protection in football in the NFL is 2-jet, 3-jet. That's all everyone runs, just 2-jet, 3-jet. And it solves all the problems. You know what your issues are. Everyone's on the same page. They all know what they got. But that's not the case in Josh McDaniels' system. It's much more complicated than that. You have literally, I would say, probably close to 50, 60 different protections. And you're probably going into a game plan with, 30 some of those, depending on how you break down the offense, how you break that down. Like, it's complicated. So I tend to think this is more of a slow build, first season, like try to figure out where you're at. It's probably not the worst time, too, if you're the Raiders, to not have a great season and be able to go into the draft and go draft one of these guys if you really like them. There's 4 different guys that I think are going to be up for, maybe 5 if you include Hendon Hooker, that you might have your choice from. And if you're ever on the fence about Derek Carr, I know you're looking at the short term going, oh, this is awful. This is like the worst thing ever. I'm done with this team. But there's also a light at the end of the tunnel because you're probably in a position to take one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft and start over and build anew with that player.
I mean, the good news is they've got the Colts next, and the Colts are just awful. They are an atrocious football team. So at least the Raiders
they
get
have
to
the
bounce
capabilities
back.
of playing well. That's the interesting thing. They're like one of those teams that they're not consistent, but they have the talent to be able to beat you on any given Sunday.
I don't know that they do. I think the Colts might be one of the worst teams in the league. Sam Ehlinger, and with no Jonathan Taylor, who's been dealing with this nagging injury, they're nowhere close to the team anybody thought they'd be going into the season.
But they still had that potential because they're definitely strong on defense still. They're still strong on defense. And, offensively, I would agree. I mean, if you don't have Jonathan Taylor, that impacts your team. And if you can't throw the ball well, that impacts your team. So you got to be able to score. But they're still one of those types of teams that can sneak up on you. I wouldn't call that an easy win. That is just one of those you hope that you get the results you're seeking from a team that's kind of struggling the same exact way. And in some regards, they're struggling too. You got 2 struggling teams.
Who would you guys say? Because there's some candidates. Obviously, the Raiders, the Packers. I would put the Cardinals in that group. But who's the most surprisingly struggling team for you this season?
Packers. Not even close.
Easily.
Like, that's
Packers.
the one that shocks you the most.
Well, because at some point, too, what I'm more surprised by is Matt LaFleur's come in there and had a lot of success, but you could tie a lot of that to the fact that Aaron Rodgers is a 2-time MVP during that period of time, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they have not adjusted, and they've not just become a team that runs the football 40 times a game. Like, that's what I'm surprised by, is they haven't made that adjustment to say, okay, our defense isn't quite as good as we thought. We still can't stop the run. Offensively, we can't throw the football because Aaron's got no one he feels like he can rely on. All right, well, you signed Aaron Jones. You drafted A.J. Dillon. You have this backfield of players. You've got an offensive line that's capable. Just go run the heck out of the football. And then you can find your way in the passing game. Or it's going to create more one-on-one opportunities. Or it's going to create bigger windows off the play-action pass. Once you keep pounding away running the football, so you're not exposing your defense and exposing the fact that you're not the same team throwing the football. Like, that's what I'm surprised by the Packers haven't adjusted to and just said, all right, we're not going to keep banging our heads against the wall, something that's not working. We're going to go out there and run the ball until they stop us, and then we'll rely on Aaron Rodgers to pick up the slack.
And that's just not happening. They're just I would say Green Bay. I also would throw Arizona probably in the mix. But when
Green
it comes,
Bay's got it by far away in ahead.
Arizona's just because you picked them to win the
What do you
That's
mean? What's that supposed to mean? I mean, I made a couple of bad decisions before the season started. Okay, the Arizona Cardinals might have been one of them, but they'll bounce back and figure something out towards the end. I just wonder because everyone's talking about Josh McDaniels potentially being on the hot seat. I don't think it happens this year. Maybe next year the whispers start to get a little bit louder, but. It is funny. The conversation was always, if Derek Carr could just ever get a number one wide receiver, if he could just get a little bit of help around him, you're going to see them play well.
Then you bring in one of the brightest offensive minds, as Q has highlighted.
And now you can't hold leads.
And you still can't hold a lead.
There's always something.
Can't win a game.
Yeah, there's just always something with this team. And here they are sitting with 2 wins on the season, dead last in the AFC West. I mean, I think they'll overtake Denver. I don't think they're going to be dead last when it's all said and done, but this division is nowhere close to what anybody thought it was going to be. Not even close.